The rejection, the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel. Horizon's Hope offered a view that should have inspired wonder. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood with her hands pressed against the transparent aluminum viewport, watching the Galactic Assembly Station grow larger as their ship approached. The station was a masterpiece of engineering, a spinning wheel 300 kilometers in diameter, home to representatives from 600 different species across the galaxy. Elena should have felt honored. She should have felt excited. Instead, her stomach churned with dread. Behind her, the door opened. Commander James Park entered, his uniform crisp despite the 3-week journey from Earth. He carried 2 cups of coffee, offering one to Eleanor. "You should eat something," James said quietly. "The presentation is in 2 hours." Eleanor accepted the coffee but did not drink. "I've reviewed my speech 47 times. I know every word, every statistic, every plea for help we're going to make. But I can't shake the feeling that it won't matter." "It has to matter," James replied. He joined her at the viewport, his reflection appearing in the glass beside hers. 4 billion people on our outer colonies are counting on us. We need the Council's help." Elena finally turned to face him. At 42, she was one of Earth's youngest ambassadors, chosen for this mission because of her expertise in xenobiology and her reputation for bridge building between cultures. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and exhaustion shadowed her brown eyes. She had barely slept since leaving Earth. "The preliminary reports from our scouts are getting worse," she said. "The Kryn swarm has already consumed 3 uninhabited systems. They're moving through space like locusts, stripping every planet of resources before moving to the next target. Our projections show them reaching the outer colonies in less than 5 months." James set down his coffee cup with more force than necessary. "Then the Council has to help us. That's what they exist for, to protect member species from existential threats." "We're not members yet," Elena reminded him. "We've only had faster-than-light travel for 18 years. In galactic terms, we're infants. Infants who wandered into claimed space and built colonies without asking permission. The truth hung between them like a weight. Humanity's expansion into the stars had been rapid and chaotic. After discovering the dormant alien gateway near Pluto, human scientists had reverse-engineered FTL technology in just 3 years. Within 15 years, Earth had established 12 colony worlds in what humans called the Perseus Reach. Those colonies now housed 4 billion people, farmers, families, children born under alien skies, dreaming of futures that might never come. Nobody had told humanity that the Perseus Reach was considered expansion territory by several established species. Nobody had explained the complex web of treaties and historical claims that governed galactic civilization. Earth had simply seen empty worlds and filled them with hope. Now the Kryn swarm was coming, and hope was dying. The Horizon's Hope docked at the assembly station precisely on schedule. Elena and her delegation of 15 humans were met by a protocol officer from the Veitari species, a being that resembled a crystalline column with multiple sensory organs spiraling around its structure. It communicated through modulated light pulses that their translation devices converted to speech. "Ambassador Vasquez, your petition has been scheduled in Chamber 7. You will have exactly 12 minutes to present your case. Council protocols require brevity from petitioning species. 12 minutes. Eleanor had prepared a 30-minute presentation. She would have to cut everything to the essentials, removing all the emotional appeals, all the human stories, all the context that might make the Council see her people as something more than statistics. Chamber 7 was enormous. The ceiling arched 50 meters overhead, and the walls curved in a perfect circle. Rising in tiers around the chamber were the seats for 600 species, each section designed for the specific environmental needs of its occupants. Some breathed oxygen like Elena. Others existed in pressure chambers filled with methane or liquid ammonia. Some didn't breathe at all. As Elena walked to the petitioner's platform at the chamber's center, she felt the weight of hundreds of alien eyes upon her. Most of the seats were empty. Her petition was not important enough to draw a full assembly. Perhaps 200 representatives had bothered to attend. She activated the translation matrix, a sphere of shimmering energy that surrounded the platform. Her words would be simultaneously translated into 600 languages, broadcast to every being present and recorded for the absent members. Honored representatives of the Galactic Assembly, Elena began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I am Dr. Elena Vasquez, representing the human species of Earth. We come before you today not as equals, but as petitioners in desperate need. We ask for your help, for your wisdom, and for your mercy. She brought up the holographic displays, showing images of the Kryn swarm. The visuals were horrifying. Massive biomechanical ships that consumed everything in their path, breaking down matter at the molecular level to fuel their endless reproduction and expansion. 5 months ago, our long-range sensors detected the Kryn swarm entering what we call the Perseus Reach. We had not encountered this species before. We attempted to establish communication. They did not respond. Instead, they began systematically consuming every resource in their path. Elena's fingers trembled slightly as she changed the display to show humanity's 12 colony worlds, each one marked with population data. Our colonies lie directly in the swarm's path. New Harmony, population 320 million. Terra Nova, population 515 million. Shepherd's World, Eden's Gate, Promise, Hope's Landing. She stopped herself. She was running out of time, and she needed to make her request clear. The Kryn swarm will reach our colonies in 4 months and 17 days. Our military analysts estimate the swarm now consists of over 30,000 vessels. Earth's combined colonial defense force has 212 ships. Elena paused, letting that ratio sink in. We cannot win this fight alone. We are here to formally request protected status under Article 7 of the Galactic Accord. We ask for military assistance, or if that is not possible, access to defensive technology that might allow us to save our people. The silence that followed her words lasted perhaps 5 seconds. Then from somewhere in the upper tiers someone laughed. It was a sound like grinding rocks, translated by the Matrix into something that resembled human amusement. The laughter spread like a ripple through the chamber. Elena felt her face burning, but she pressed on. We understand we are a young species. We understand we made mistakes by colonizing without full knowledge of galactic protocols. But surely the Assembly recognizes that the extinction of 4 billion innocent people is not an appropriate punishment for ignorance. We are willing to accept any conditions, relocate our colonies if necessary, pay any reasonable price, please. We are asking for the chance to survive. The laughter had subsided, replaced by murmuring discussions in hundreds of alien languages. Finally, a figure rose from the central tier. This was Executive Vril, the presiding officer of the Assembly. Vril belonged to the Korthan species, beings of living metal who had achieved spaceflight before humans discovered fire. His voice resonated through the chamber like a struck gong. Petitioner Vasquez, your presentation has been noted. However, I must inform you that the Assembly cannot grant your request. Article 7 protections apply only to established civilizations with documented claims to their territories. Your species has existed in space for less than 2 decades. You have no historical claims, no treaties, and no standing in galactic law. Elena felt her world tilting. But the Kryn swarm operates in accordance with its nature, Vril interrupted. They are a recognized species with their own territorial rights. Your colonies were established in a region that intersects with 17 different expansion corridors, including the Kryns. This is your era, not theirs. From another section, a representative of the Thulian hierarchy stood. The Thulians were warriors, massive beings covered in armored plates with 4 arms and faces that resembled Earth's beetles. This one's name was General Krax, and his voice carried the weight of contempt. I will be honest with your primitive species, human. Your people are children, playing with tools they do not understand. You discovered FTL technology by accident, stumbled into space without guidance, and now you cry for help when you face the consequences of your ignorance. My species conquered 40 star systems before we were as old in space as you are now. We did it through strength and intelligence, not by begging others to save us. More laughter, more agreement from various representatives. Elena searched desperately for any sympathetic face, any species that might advocate for humanity. She found none. A floating jellyfish-like creature from the Nyx Collective added its voice, speaking in musical tones that the translator rendered as words. Perhaps this is nature's way of correcting an error. Species that expand too quickly without wisdom often face extinction. It maintains the balance. The galaxy has seen thousands of species rise and fall. What makes humans believe they deserve special treatment? Elena's carefully prepared diplomatic responses crumbled. Raw desperation took over. What makes us deserve treatment? We're people. 4 billion people with families, with children, with dreams and hopes, and... Her voice cracked. How can you just sit there and debate philosophy, while billions of sentient beings face extermination? You have the power to help us. You have weapons and shields and technologies beyond our understanding. All we're asking is that you share enough to give us a chance. Executor Vrill's metallic face showed no emotion. Petitioner Vasquez, the Assembly has responsibilities to 600 member species. We cannot establish precedents that would obligate us to intervene in every conflict involving pre-member civilizations. If we granted your request, we would face 10,000 similar petitions within a cycle. The Assembly must maintain its standards and protocols. Then sell us weapons, Elena said, abandoning all pretense of diplomacy. We'll pay any price. Our planet is rich in rare elements. We have gold, platinum, uranium, whatever you want. Just give us the tools to defend ourselves. A being made entirely of coherent energy patterns spoke from the science tier. Its words came through the translator as precise and cold. We do not arm developing species with advanced technology. The risk of misuse is too great. Your species still engages in warfare among yourselves. You have conflicts over resources and ideological differences. We will not give plasma weapons to beings who still use chemical explosives against each other. Elena looked up at the 600 species, at the beings who had mastered the stars while humans were still learning to make fire, and she understood a terrible truth. They did not care. To them, humanity was nothing more than an interesting footnote, a brief amusement before they moved on to more important matters. Then what should we do? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. General Krax leaned forward, his armored bulk making his seat groan. My advice, human. Run, you have 4 months. Load as many people as you can into your primitive ships and flee into deep space. Find some empty corner of the galaxy where you can hide and grow and learn. Come back to us in a few thousand years when you've earned the right to stand among civilized species. Until then, you are on your own. The chamber erupted in sounds that the translator interpreted as agreement, approval, even amusement. Executor Vrill raised a metallic hand for silence. The Assembly's decision is final. Humanity's petition for protected status is denied. Military assistance is denied. Technology transfers are denied. However, in acknowledgement of your difficult situation, the Assembly grants you access to our communication networks to coordinate evacuation efforts. That is the extent of aid we can provide. This session is concluded. The platform beneath Elena's feet began descending, lowering her back toward the chamber's exit level. As she sank down through the tiers of alien representatives, she could hear them already moving on to the next agenda item, something about trade routes and tariff regulations, discussed with far more passion than they had shown for humanity's extinction. Elena's delegation met her at the exit. No one spoke during the long walk back to their ship. What was there to say? They had traveled 3 weeks to reach the Assembly. They had brought humanity's desperate plea before the galaxy's most powerful civilization, and they had been dismissed like children asking adults to solve problems too trivial to matter. Commander Park finally broke the silence as they boarded the Horizon's Hope. What do we tell them? What do we tell the 4 billion people waiting for our answer? Eleanor stared out the viewport as the assembly station began to shrink behind them. 600 species lived in that station, each one with the power to save humanity. Not one had cared enough to try. We tell them the truth, she said quietly. We tell them that we're alone, that no help is coming, that we have 4 months to either evacuate or prepare to fight. She turned to face her delegation, and they saw something new in her eyes. Not despair, but a cold, burning determination. And then we show them what humans do when the galaxy abandons us to die. We survive, we fight. We make them remember that they had a chance to help us. And they chose to laugh instead. The Horizon's Hope began its 3-week journey back to Earth. Behind them, the Galactic Assembly continued its business, already forgetting the primitive species that had dared to ask for help. They would not forget for long. Humanity was about to teach the galaxy a lesson about underestimating those who fight for survival. The emergency session of Earth's United Defense Council convened 6 hours after the Horizon's Hope docked at Lunar Station. Every nation's representative was present. either in person or via holographic projection. The chamber buzzed with anxious voices speaking a dozen different languages, all asking the same question. What now? Eleanor stood at the central podium, exhaustion pulling at her bones. She had not slept since leaving the assembly station. Commander Park stood beside her, his face grim as they waited for the chamber to quiet. President Amara Okonkwo of the African Federation called the session to order. She was a woman in her 60s with steel-grey hair and eyes that had witnessed too many crises. Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Ambassador Vasquez. Commander Park, please deliver your report. Elena activated the central display, showing the recording of their petition to the Galactic Assembly. The chamber fell silent as Earth's leaders watched humanity being dismissed, mocked, and abandoned. When Executive Vrill's final denial echoed through the speakers, the silence was absolute. Elena spoke into that silence, her voice flat with exhaustion. The Galactic Assembly has refused all assistance. No military aid, no technology transfers, no weapon sales. They have granted us access to their communication networks for evacuation coordination. That is all. The chamber erupted. Voices overlapped in anger, fear, and desperation. Chancellor Zhang of the Pacific Alliance was shouting about diplomatic protests. Prime Minister Adeyemi of the West African Union was demanding they petition individual species directly. The colonial representatives were screaming that Earth must send every available ship to evacuate their worlds immediately. President Okonkwo let them rage for exactly 30 seconds before slamming her hand on the podium with enough force to activate the sonic dampers. The chamber fell silent again. Enough. Shouting will not save us. We need solutions, not panic. She looked at Elena. What are our options? Elena pulled up evacuation projections on the display. The numbers were brutal. Earth and the colonies possess approximately 3,000 interstellar-capable vessels. If we convert every cargo hauler, every passenger liner, every research vessel into evacuation transports, we can move roughly 800 million people in 4 months. That leaves 3.2 billion people with no way off the colony worlds. Then we focus on Earth, someone said from the back. We abandon the colonies and bring everyone home. The colonial representatives exploded in fury. Governor Sarah Martinez of New Harmony, appearing via hologram, was nearly screaming. Abandon? You want to abandon 300 million people on my world alone? Children, families, elderly colonists who gave everything to build new lives. You just leave them to die? What choice do we have? Chancellor Zhang shot back. We cannot save everyone. We save who we can. And who decides who lives and who dies? Governor Chen of Terra Nova demanded. Do we hold lotteries? Do we choose by age, by profession, by who has the right connections? How do we pick 800 million people to save and condemn 3 billion to death? The argument spiraled into chaos again. Helena watched Earth's leaders tear at each other, each one desperate to save their own people, their own nations, their own families. No one had good answers because there were no good answers. Then a new voice cut through the noise. We fight, every head turned. General Marcus Chen stood at the military tier entrance. He was 62 years old, with close-cropped grey hair and a face marked by old scars from the resource wars of his youth. He had commanded Earth's combined defense forces for 12 years, overseeing the transformation from competing national militaries into a unified planetary defense network. He walked to the podium with the confidence of a man who had already made his decision. General Chen, President Okonkwo said carefully. We have 212 ships. The Kryn swarm has over 30,000. Fighting is suicide. Running is suicide, Chen replied. He activated his own display, showing fleet compositions and tactical projections. Evacuating 800 million and abandoning 3 billion is not survival. It's choosing who to kill, so I propose something different. We use those 4 months to build the largest fleet humanity has ever seen, and we fight for our colonies. The chamber exploded in disbelief. Build a fleet in 4 months? It was impossible. It took 2 years to construct a single capital ship. Even the fastest military corvettes required 8 months of construction time. Chen waited for the noise to die down before continuing. You're right that we cannot build traditional warships in time. So we don't build traditional warships. We build weapons platforms, armored boxes with engines, life support and guns. No luxury, no elegance, just function. He brought up ship designs that made several representatives gasp. They were ugly things, barely more than rectangular hulls with massive engine blocks and weapon mounts welded to every available surface. These are Pattern A combat vessels, Chen explained. 300 meters long, crew of 60, armed with 12 railgun batteries and 8 missile pods. Construction time using modular assembly, 11 days from raw materials to space-worthy vessel. We have shipyards at Luna, Mars, Europa, Titan, and all 12 colony worlds. If we mobilize completely, convert every factory, conscript every engineer and fabricator, we can produce approximately 15,000 combat vessels in 4 months. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Earth's chief weapons engineer, joined Chen at the podium. She was a small woman of Japanese descent, 45 years old, with hands stained from years of laboratory work. She brought up weapon specifications that made the military representatives lean forward with interest. The galaxy uses energy weapons, plasma cannons, particle beams, graviton projectors. These are sophisticated technologies, thousands of years advanced beyond ours. We cannot match them. She smiled, and there was something predatory in that expression. So we're going backwards. We're building weapons the galaxy abandoned millennia ago and forgot how to defend against. She displayed a railgun system, massive magnetic accelerators that hurled solid projectiles at tremendous speeds. Railguns fire tungsten carbide slugs, massing 200 kilograms at velocities approaching 12% of light speed. The kinetic energy released on impact exceeds most conventional energy weapons. More importantly, the galaxy's energy shields are optimized to deflect plasma and particle streams, not solid matter traveling at relativistic speeds. You're proposing we fight advanced alien technology with railguns and missiles? Someone asked incredulously. I'm proposing we fight with physics, Tanaka replied. Energy shields work by deflecting charged particles and electromagnetic radiation. They're terrible at stopping solid mass. A 200-kilogram tungsten slug moving at 0.12 C doesn't care about your shield technology. It's just momentum. Basic physics. Mass times velocity equals a very bad day for whatever it hits. General Chen brought up tactical simulations showing how the human fleet would fight. Small vessels swarming larger targets, overwhelming their defensive systems with sheer numbers and kinetic weapons. It looked chaotic, almost suicidal, but the simulations showed it could work, if the crews were willing to accept catastrophic casualties. You're talking about sending thousands of people to die, President Okonkwo said quietly. I'm talking about giving 4 billion people a chance to live, Chen replied. Yes, we'll lose ships. Yes, people will die. But they'll die fighting for their homes, their families, their future. That's better than choosing 3 billion people to abandon and leaving them to die without hope. Elena had remained silent during this exchange, but now she found her voice. General, even with 15,000 ships, we're outnumbered 2 to 1. The Kryn vessels are larger, better armed, and have regenerative hulls. Your own simulations show we'll lose 70% of our fleet in the first engagement. 73%, Chen corrected. But Ambassador, let me ask you something. When you stood before the Galactic Assembly and they laughed at humanity's plea for help, what did you feel? Elena remembered that moment, the shame and rage burning in her chest, as 600 species dismissed human lives as meaningless. Anger, she said quietly. That anger is what will save us, Chen said. The Kryn swarm expects easy prey. They expect us to run or surrender like every other species they've consumed. They don't expect us to build a fleet in 4 months. They don't expect us to fight back with everything we have. They don't expect us to use weapons they've forgotten how to defend against. That surprise, that fury, that absolute refusal to accept extinction, that's our advantage, Dr. Tanaka added, her voice. Every major military power in human history has made the mistake of underestimating enemies they considered primitive. The Mongols defeated armies using tactics established powers dismissed as barbaric. Vietnam defeated the most powerful military on Earth, using weapons and strategies considered outdated. We're not trying to beat the Kryn at their own game. We're changing the rules of the game entirely. Commander Park, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. I was with Ambassador Vasquez when the Assembly denied our petition. I watched species that could save us choose not to, because we didn't matter to them. General Chen is right. We cannot save everyone through evacuation. We cannot negotiate with the Kryn, they don't communicate. We cannot ask the galaxy for help. They've already refused. Fighting is our only option. The debate continued for 6 more hours. Representatives argued about resources, logistics, ethics, and the mathematics of survival. But slowly, inevitably, the chamber reached a consensus. Not because fighting was the best option, but because it was the only option that didn't require choosing which billions of people to abandon. President Okonkwo called for a vote at dawn. The resolution was simple. Earth would mobilize its complete industrial capacity for war production. Every resource, every factory, every available person would be directed toward building a fleet and preparing for battle. Volunteers would be recruited and trained. Civilians would become soldiers. The entire species would unite for survival. The vote was not unanimous. Some delegates argued for evacuation, for attempting negotiation, for trying one more petition to the Assembly. But when the count finished, 87% had voted for war. Humanity would fight. The transformation began immediately. Within days, automobile factories on 5 continents were retooled to produce missile components. Civilian fabrication plants started churning out armor plating. Universities converted their engineering programs into accelerated military training courses. Teenagers who had dreamed of becoming artists or musicians or scientists learned to operate weapons systems instead. The shipyards became the heart of Earth's war effort. Lunar Station, the massive orbital complex that had taken 40 years to build, now worked around the clock producing Pattern combat vessels. The construction bays, designed to build 2 or 3 ships simultaneously, were reconfigured to assemble 20 at a time using modular construction techniques. General Chen established what he called the swarm doctrine for training new crews. Instead of teaching complex fleet maneuvers and traditional military tactics, he focused on 3 principles: get close, overwhelm their targeting systems with numbers, and hit them with everything you have. It was brutal, simple, and designed for crews with minimal training time. Elena watched the mobilization from her office at the United Nations complex in Geneva. Every morning brought new numbers. 5,000 ships completed, 7,000, 10,000, 20 million volunteers enlisted, 30 million, 40 million, young and old, experienced spacers and civilians who had never left Earth's surface, all volunteering to crew vessels they knew were essentially flying coffins. She received regular updates from deep space monitoring stations, tracking the Kryn swarm's advance. The biomechanical fleet moved through space like a living thing, consuming everything in its path. Their ships were massive, some over 5 kilometers long. Their hulls composed of organic material that could repair damage in real time. Each vessel housed thousands of Kryn organisms, working in perfect coordination to strip planets bare of resources. The swarm had already consumed 17 uninhabited systems in the Perseus Reach. They were 3 months away from New Harmony, humanity's largest and oldest colony. Helena tried one final diplomatic approach. She sent messages to every species on the Galactic Assembly, bypassing the formal channels to contact individual governments directly. She explained humanity's preparations, offered trade agreements and alliances, begged for even basic intelligence about Kryn tactics and weaknesses. Most ignored her messages. A few responded with variations of, "We warned you this would happen." Only one species, the Vaitari crystalline beings, sent anything useful, a brief database on Kryn biology and combat patterns. It was not much, but it was more than humanity had before. Dr. Tanaka used that information to refine weapon designs. The Kryn ships had thick organic armor that regenerated quickly, but the database revealed they had relatively weak internal structures. A projectile that penetrated the hull would cause catastrophic internal damage that their regeneration systems couldn't quickly repair. Human engineers redesigned the railgun ammunition accordingly. The new slugs were needle-shaped, designed to punch through armor and fragment inside the target. They called them splinter rounds, and each one carried enough kinetic energy to shatter a building. As the deadline approached, Eleanor found herself visiting the construction yards more frequently. She watched welders working in vacuum, their torchlight visible as tiny stars against the darkness. She spoke with volunteers, listening to their stories. A grandmother from New Harmony, who enlisted because her 6 grandchildren lived there. A young man from Terra Nova, who gave up a scholarship to join the Defense Force. A married couple from Earth, who crewed the same ship because they refused to be separated. They all knew the odds. They all understood that most would not survive the first battle. They enlisted anyway, because running meant abandoning billions, and humanity had decided that some things were worth dying for. On the final day before the Kryn reached human space, General Chen addressed the fleet. 15,342 combat vessels floated in formation around the outer system, along with 212 original military ships and another 8,000 converted civilian vessels pressed into service. 23,554 ships total, crewed by 1.4 million human beings. Chen's message reached every vessel simultaneously. This is General Marcus Chen to all human forces. In 4 hours, the Kryn swarm will enter our space. They come to exterminate us, to consume our worlds, to erase humanity from the galaxy. They believe we are weak. They believe we will run or surrender. They are wrong. He paused, and when he continued, his voice carried the weight of human history. Every battle fought, every impossible victory achieved, every time humanity had refused to accept defeat. We are the species that crawled from caves to touch the stars. We survived ice ages and plagues and wars. We split the atom and decoded our own genes. We built cities and wrote symphonies and reached for the impossible. And now, when the galaxy tells us we don't matter, when ancient species laugh at our pain, when the universe itself seems determined to erase us, now we show them what humanity truly is. We are survivors. We are fighters. We are the species that refuses to die quietly. His voice hardened. The Kryn expect prey. Give them predators. They expect surrender. Give them war. They expect us to break. Show them that humans don't break. We bend, we adapt, we find new ways to fight. Today we teach the galaxy that mocking Earth was the biggest mistake they ever made. Today we make them remember our name. For Earth, for our families, for humanity. The response came from 23,000 ships simultaneously. For humanity. Elena watched the fleet from Lunar Station's observation deck. Through the viewport, human vessels stretched as far as she could see. Ugly, blocky things bristling with weapons, each one carrying 60 people who had volunteered to face impossible odds. Commander Park joined her at the window. Do you think we can win? Elena remembered the assembly's laughter, remembered Executive Rill's cold dismissal, remembered General Cracks telling humanity to run and hide. She thought about 4 billion people living on 12 worlds, people who had trusted their leaders to protect them, people who deserved a chance to survive. I don't know if we can win, she said quietly, but I know that we'll make the galaxy regret underestimating us. And if we die, we'll die proving that human lives matter, even if the galaxy doesn't agree. The Kryn swarm emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the system. 32,000 biomechanical vessels, each one massive and terrible, moving with the coordinated precision of a hive organism. They had consumed hundreds of worlds across thousands of years. They expected this to be routine. They were wrong. The human fleet charged forward to meet them, and the battle for humanity's survival began. The first human ship to die in the Battle of New Harmony was the Promise Keeper, a Pattern combat vessel commanded by Captain Sarah Okafor, President Okonkwo's youngest daughter. She was 26 years old and had been engaged to be married before volunteering for the Defense Force. The Kryn bioship's plasma cannon vaporized her vessel in 3 seconds, turning steel and human flesh into superheated gas. She would not be the last. General Chen watched from his flagship Humanity's Defiance, a converted military cruiser that served as the fleet's command center. The tactical displays showed the battle unfolding across 3-dimensional space, each icon representing a human ship, each blink indicating a vessel destroyed. The Kryn swarm had entered New Harmony's system in a tight formation, their massive bioships moving with the coordinated precision of a single organism. The human fleet scattered like a flock of birds facing a predator, breaking into hundreds of smaller groups. It looked like chaos, like panic, like a rout. That was intentional. All units execute swarm pattern Delta, Chen ordered. Make them chase ghosts. The Pattern A vessels were faster and more maneuverable than the massive Kryn bioships. Human captains used that advantage ruthlessly, darting in to fire railgun salvos before retreating at maximum acceleration. The Kryn targeting systems, designed to track dozens of threats, were overwhelmed by hundreds appearing from every direction simultaneously. But the Kryn plasma weapons, were devastating. When they hit, human ships simply ceased to exist. The battle's first 10 minutes cost humanity 417 vessels. Chen watched the numbers climb and forced himself to remain calm. This was expected. This was planned for. The losses were within acceptable parameters. 417 ships, 25,000 human beings gone. Dr. Tanaka's voice came through on the tactical channel. She was aboard Newton's Hammer, one of the science vessels coordinating the railgun targeting solutions. General, first impact confirmed. Splinter rounds are working. The Kryn regeneration systems can't keep up with internal fragmentation damage. Chen pulled up the targeting data. One of the Kryn bioships, a 4-kilometer monster, had been hit by a concentrated railgun barrage from 30 human vessels. The tungsten carbide slugs had punched through its organic armor and fragmented inside. The bioship's hull was rupturing from within, atmosphere and biological material venting into space. It was dying. All units focus fire on damaged targets, Chen ordered. Don't let their regeneration systems recover. Hit them again and again until they break. The human fleet adapted instantly. Pattern A vessels began coordinating their attacks, multiple ships targeting single Kryn vessels with overlapping fire. The Kryn bioships tried to adjust, their plasma cannons targeting the human ships that posed the greatest threat, but there were too many. For every human vessel they destroyed, 5 more took its place. The battle raged for 72 hours without pause. Human crews fought in rotating shifts, sleeping at their stations for 4 hours before returning to combat. They fought until their ammunition ran out, then rammed their ships into Kryn vessels at relativistic speeds, turning themselves into kinetic weapons. They fought with a desperation and fury that the Kryn had never encountered before. Ambassador Elena Vasquez watched the battle from Luna Station, monitoring the feeds with President Okonkwo and the other world leaders. The casualty reports came in steady streams. 3,000 ships lost, 5,000, 8,000. Each number represented 60 human lives, 60 families, 60 futures erased. But the Kryn were dying too. The tactical displays showed Kryn bioships rupturing, exploding, falling out of formation as their organic systems failed. Humanity's primitive kinetic weapons were tearing through defenses designed to stop energy attacks. The splinter rounds fragmented inside the bioships' hulls, shredding the delicate internal structures that the Kryn's regeneration systems couldn't quickly repair. On the 3rd day of battle, something unexpected happened. A Kryn bioship, one of their massive command vessels, transmitted a signal. Not to the human fleet. The Kryn had never communicated with their prey before. The signal went directly to the Galactic Assembly's emergency channel. The message was simple, transmitted in the mathematical language used for interspecies distress calls. Assistance required. Encountering unexpected resistance. Forces inadequate. Request immediate support. The Kryn were calling for help. Across the galaxy, on the Galactic Assembly Station, the emergency session was already underway. The chamber was packed for the first time in decades, all 600 species present either physically or via hologram. They had been watching the Battle of New Harmony for 3 days, watching something that should have been impossible. High Arbiter Vril stood at the central podium, his metallic form reflecting the light from the tactical displays surrounding him. Those displays showed the battle in real time, showed the Kryn swarm, the force that had resisted the combined military efforts of the galaxy for 2,000 years, being systematically destroyed by a species barely 18 years into space travel. This council must address the situation, Vril announced, his voice carrying no emotion, but the words themselves were heavy with implication. 3 standard days ago, the Kryn swarm engaged human defensive forces at the colony world designated New Harmony. Current analysis indicates the Kryn have lost 8,300 vessels. The humans have lost 11,200 vessels. General Krax, the Thulian warrior who had mocked humanity 4 months ago, stood slowly. His armored bulk seemed diminished somehow, as if watching the battle had broken something inside him. The casualty ratio is favorable to the humans against the Kryn with primitive kinetic weapons. This should not be possible. A member of the Nyx collective, the floating jellyfish being, spoke in musical tones that carried disbelief. We have analyzed their tactics. They are not sophisticated. They simply attack in overwhelming numbers, accepting catastrophic casualties to destroy individual targets. It is wasteful, inefficient, barbaric. It is working, said Executor Thane of the Veitari, the crystalline species that had sent humanity the database on Kryn biology. The humans are losing more vessels, but their industrial capacity allows them to sustain those losses. The Kryn cannot regenerate bioships as quickly as humans are destroying them. If current trends continue, the Kryn will be defeated within 72 hours. The chamber fell silent. Defeated. The Kryn swarm, defeated by humans. How did they build so many ships? Someone asked. Our intelligence indicated Earth possessed approximately 200 military vessels. Dr. Tanaka's tactical analysis appeared on the displays, not because the humans had sent it, but because the Assembly's monitoring systems had analyzed the battle extensively. The analysis showed the Pattern A combat vessels, their crude but functional design, the modular construction techniques that allowed rapid assembly. They sacrificed everything for war production, Vril explained. They converted their entire civilization's industrial capacity to building these weapons platforms. No luxury, no aesthetic consideration, just function. And their weapons, he pulled up data on the railgun systems. They are using technology we abandoned 8,000 years ago. Our defensive systems are not optimized to counter kinetic projectiles at these velocities. Executor Thane projected more data. The humans lost 11,000 vessels, but they constructed over 15,000 in 4 months. They have another 8,000 vessels in reserve, plus 9,000 more under construction. If we extrapolate their production capacity forward, within 2 years, they could field a fleet of over 200,000 ships. The implications hung in the chamber like a weight. A species that could build fleets like humans could build them would reshape galactic power structures completely. What happens when they turn that capacity toward us? General Krax asked quietly. We refused their plea for help. We laughed at their desperation. They will remember. What happens when humanity decides the Galactic Assembly is their enemy? The question nobody wanted to answer. At New Harmony, the battle entered its final phase. The Kryn swarm had been reduced to fewer than 20,000 vessels, many of them damaged, their hive coordination breaking down as command bioships were destroyed. The human fleet, though reduced to just over 12,000 ships, pressed their advantage with relentless fury. General Chen identified the Kryn's primary hive mind vessel, a massive 10-kilometer bioship at the center of their formation. Intelligence suggested that destroying it would collapse the swarm's coordination completely, turning them from a unified force into thousands of independent vessels capable of only basic tactics. All available ships, target the central command vessel, Chen ordered. Everything we have left, everything we are, we throw it at that thing. He did not wait for acknowledgments. He simply plotted a collision course and pushed humanity's defiance toward the Kryn hive mind vessel. Around him, every human ship still capable of fighting did the same. The Kryn defenses focused everything on stopping them. Plasma fire filled space like a solid wall of energy. Human ships disintegrated by the dozens, by the hundreds, but some got through. They fired their remaining ammunition, launched their last missiles, and when they had nothing left, they rammed. Humanity's defiance took 17 direct hits during its final approach. The bridge was breached, life support failing, half the crew dead. But the engine still worked. General Chen, alone at the helm now, his officers dead around him, steered his ship directly into the hive mind vessel's central section. His last transmission reached every surviving human ship. For Earth, for our children, for humanity. The impact released energy equivalent to a nuclear detonation. The hive mind vessel's organic hull split open, its internal structures rupturing. The Kryn hive consciousness, the collective intelligence that had coordinated 30,000 bioships, simply ceased to exist. Without hive coordination, the remaining Kryn vessels fell into chaos. Individual bioships began making independent decisions, fighting in uncoordinated patterns. The surviving human forces pressed their advantage ruthlessly. When the Kryn finally broke and retreated into hyperspace, fewer than 6,000 of their vessels remained operational. The Battle of New Harmony was over. Humanity had won at a cost of over 14,000 ships and more than 800,000 lives. 3 days later, Ambassador Elena Vasquez received an official invitation from the Galactic Assembly. The message was brief, but its implications were enormous. The Galactic Assembly requests the presence of Ambassador Vasquez to discuss Earth's application for full Council membership and associated rights, privileges, and responsibilities. Military escort is permitted. Appropriate honors will be observed. Elena read the message 3 times, barely believing it. 4 months ago, they had begged for help. Now the Assembly was inviting them back with appropriate honors and permission for military escort. She composed her reply carefully. Ambassador Vasquez will return to the Assembly to discuss your offer. She will be accompanied by appropriate security. We expect proper treatment this time. The escorts arrived at the Assembly station 5 days before Elena's diplomatic vessel. 12 human warships, each one scarred from battle with the Kryn, their hulls still bearing the marks of plasma impacts and shrapnel damage. They took up positions around the station in what could only be described as a defensive formation. The message was clear. Humanity would not be dismissed again. Elena walked into chamber, 7 with a very different delegation than last time. Admiral Wei Zhang had succeeded General Chen as Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces. Behind them came 20 representatives from Earth and the 12 colonies, each one chosen to represent humanity's diversity and strength. Every seat in the chamber was filled. All 600 species had come to witness this. Elena reached the petitioner's platform, but she did not activate the translation matrix immediately. She stood in silence, looking up at the faces that had laughed at her plea 4 months ago. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm but carried an edge of cold steel. 4 months ago, I stood here and begged for help. I explained that my species faced extinction. I asked for protection, for weapons, for any assistance you could provide. You laughed at me. You called us primitive, ignorant, too weak to matter. You told me to run and hide. She paused. Nobody interrupted. Nobody laughed this time. We did not run. We did not hide. We stood and fought with everything we had. 800,000 of our people died in that battle. General Chen, who should be standing here instead of me, died ramming his ship into the enemy command vessel. His last words were, "For Earth, for our children, for humanity." That's what you refused to help us protect. Our children, our future. She looked directly at General Krax. You told us we should have stayed in our cradle world. We learned to walk among the stars. And you taught us the lesson. In this galaxy, nobody helps the weak. Might matters more than justice. You can only rely on yourself. The Thulian warrior lowered his massive head, unable to meet her gaze. Elena continued, her voice growing stronger. Now you offer us full council membership, rights and privileges, access to your technology and markets. You offer this not because you believe we deserve it, but because you fear what we might become if you refuse us again. You watched us defeat the Kryn, and now you're wondering what happens when humanity decides you're the problem. High Arbiter Vril spoke carefully. Ambassador Vasquez, you are correct that concern for future relations influenced our decision. But you must acknowledge that what your species accomplished was remarkable. You earned our respect through your courage and determination. Courage and determination, Elena repeated. 4 months ago, you called those same qualities primitive stubbornness. The only difference is that we proved we could hurt you if we wanted to. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every species she could. Humanity will accept council membership, but we accept it on our terms. We want permanent seats on both the Security Directorate and the Expansion Planning Commission. We want unrestricted access to all galactic markets and defensive technologies. We want a formal treaty provision, stating that any species requesting protection from extinction must receive fair consideration and assistance if possible. And we want public acknowledgement from this council that refusing our initial petition was an error in judgment. The chamber erupted in protest. 2 permanent seats? Public acknowledgement of error. Unprecedented. But Elena raised her hand and the chamber gradually quieted. These are not negotiations, she said calmly. These are our requirements. You abandoned us to die. We survived despite you. You don't get to dictate terms anymore. You can accept our conditions and gain humanity as an ally, or you can refuse and wonder every day whether those 12 warships outside are the beginning of something larger. Your choice. Admiral Zhang stepped forward and placed a data storage device on the podium. This contains detailed specifications of every weapon system and tactical doctrine we used against the Kryn. Railgun designs, splinter round specifications, swarm coordination protocols. If the Council accepts Ambassador Vasquez's terms, this technology is yours to study and integrate into your defensive systems. If you refuse, we keep our innovations to ourselves and continue developing them independently. The message was clear. Humanity had developed effective weapons that could threaten any species in the galaxy. They could share that knowledge or weaponize it. They could be allies or armed rivals. The Council deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, Executor Vril stood at the central podium, and his metallic voice carried a note of something Elena had never heard from him before. Respect. The Galactic Assembly accepts humanity's terms. All of them. You will be granted permanent representation on the Security Directorate and Expansion Commission. Ambassador Vasquez, on behalf of this Council, we formally acknowledge that refusing your initial petition for assistance was an error in judgment. We failed you when you needed help, and we deeply regret that failure. We hope that Earth can forgive us, and that we may build a productive relationship going forward. There was no laughter this time, only silence and the weight of 600 species recognizing that the galaxy had changed. A new power had emerged, forged in desperation and tempered by war. 1 year passed. The galaxy Elena Vasquez navigated was transformed. Human shipyards now supplied 47% of the galaxy's civilian transport vessels. Earth's manufacturing capacity had become legendary. What they had done to build a war fleet in 4 months, they now did for peaceful commerce, churning out cargo haulers and exploration vessels at rates that made other species marvel. The Galactic War College sent regular delegations to study human tactical doctrines. The swarm coordination protocols that had seemed chaotic and barbaric during the battle were now recognized as revolutionary approaches to asymmetric warfare. Treaties followed. The Thulian hierarchy proposed a formal defense pact. The Vaetari Collective established technology exchange programs. 12 minor species that had never had significant voices in the Assembly began rallying around humanity's delegation, seeing in Earth's representatives a willingness to advocate for the small and vulnerable. But not everyone celebrated humanity's rise. The Kryn, though defeated, had not forgotten. Their shattered hive retreated to their core worlds, replacing the dead hive mind with a new consciousness. They were rebuilding, adapting their bioships to counter kinetic weapons, preparing for the day they would face humanity again. Elena received intelligence reports on Kryn activities regularly. They were also approaching other species, trying to form coalitions, offering technology and territory to anyone willing to help them destroy humanity. During a Security Directorate meeting, Elena addressed these concerns directly, standing before holographic displays showing Kryn space and marking their shipyard locations. The Kryn are preparing for another conflict, she explained. They're modifying their bioships specifically to counter our weapons. They're adapting to fight humanity, and they're not alone. 3 minor species have shown interest in anti-human coalitions, waiting to see how the galaxy responds. Admiral Zhang added his analysis. If we show weakness, if we appear divided or unprepared, we'll face not just the Kryn, but a coalition. If we show strength and unity with our allies, potential enemies will reconsider. Executor Vril, now an unlikely ally of humanity, spoke gravely. The Council stands with Earth. We will not make the mistake of abandoning you again. Any species that moves against humanity moves against the Assembly. It was not just politics. The galaxy had learned a terrible lesson. Never underestimate a species fighting for survival. Never dismiss those who seem weak or primitive. And never, ever laugh at someone begging for help to save their children, because humanity had taught the galaxy something fundamental. The most dangerous enemies are not the strong or the advanced or the powerful. The most dangerous enemies are those who have nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Elena stood in her office, looking out at the traffic patterns around the assembly station. Among the elegant alien vessels, human ships were now commonplace, their blocky utilitarian designs standing out, but no longer looking primitive. They looked purposeful, determined, strong. She thought about General Chen's sacrifice, about the 800,000 who died at New Harmony, about the 4 billion who survived, because humanity refused to accept defeat. She thought about the galaxy that had laughed at Earth's desperation and now watched humanity with wary respect. Her communication console chimed. President Okonkwo's face appeared on the screen. Older now, the weight of leadership etched deeper into her features. Ambassador, we've received confirmation. The Kryn diplomatic envoy has agreed to preliminary peace talks. They're requesting neutral territory, assembly mediation and human participation. Elena felt a complex mixture of emotions. The Kryn wanted to talk. The species that had never communicated with its prey, that had consumed hundreds of worlds across thousands of years, now wanted to negotiate with humanity. What are their terms? Elena asked. They're offering territorial concessions, recognition of human expansion rights in the Perseus Reach, and a non-aggression pact lasting 500 years. In exchange, they want access to our kinetic weapon technology and a commitment that we won't share our tactical doctrines with their traditional enemies. It was a substantial offer. The Kryn were essentially acknowledging humanity as an equal power and trying to ensure they never had to fight humans again. What does the Council recommend? Elena asked. Okonkwo's expression was thoughtful. The military advisors say we should reject it. They argue we're in a position of strength and should press our advantage, possibly eliminate the Kryn threat permanently. The diplomatic corps says we should accept. 500 years of peace would allow us to consolidate our position and build stronger alliances. And what do you think, Madam President? Okonkwo was silent for a moment. I think about my daughter. Sarah died in the first 3 minutes of the Battle of New Harmony. She was 26 years old, Elena. She was going to be married. She volunteered because she believed in protecting our people, but she didn't want to die. None of them wanted to die. Her voice remained steady, but Elena could see the pain behind her eyes. 800,000 people died at New Harmony. If we can prevent another war, if we can give their sacrifice meaning by building a lasting peace, then I think we owe it to them to try. We proved we can fight. Now let's prove we can build something better. Elena nodded slowly. I'll arrange the preliminary talks. But we negotiate from strength, not desperation. The Kryn need to understand that humanity isn't afraid of them anymore. 3 months later, the peace talks concluded with the Treaty of New Harmony, named for the world where humanity had proven its strength. The Kryn received access to kinetic weapon technology in exchange for territorial concessions that gave humanity secure expansion corridors. Both species agreed to a non-aggression pact and established diplomatic channels for resolving future conflicts. It was not perfect. Trust between humans and Kryn would take generations to build. But it was peace, and peace meant that no more young people like Sarah Okonkwo had to die before they got the chance to live. 5 years after humanity joined the Galactic Assembly, Elena Vasquez stood once again at the observation deck of Luna Station. The view was different now. The orbital yards that had built weapons of war during humanity's darkest hour now constructed vessels of exploration and commerce. Earth had become one of the galaxy's major industrial powers, not through conquest, but through the same determination that had allowed them to survive. Commander Park, now Admiral Park and Elena's husband of 2 years, joined her at the viewport. They had found comfort in each other during the aftermath of the war. 2 people who had witnessed humanity's near extinction and understood what it meant to fight for survival. The new exploration fleet launches tomorrow, James said, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. 25 ships heading into uncharted space. Volunteers, scientists, dreamers looking for new worlds to settle. Elena smiled. That's what we were supposed to be from the beginning. Explorers, not warriors. We're both now, James replied. The galaxy made sure of that. He was right. Humanity had been transformed by the crucible of war. They had learned to fight, to sacrifice, to stand against impossible odds. But they had also learned something equally important. They were not alone, and they would never again stand by while others faced extinction. Under Elena's leadership, the Assembly had adopted the Human Protection Protocols, new provisions ensuring that any species requesting help against existential threats would receive fair consideration and assistance when possible. It was the legacy of humanity's suffering, ensuring that no other species would face abandonment the way Earth had. Do you think the galaxy is better for what happened? Elena asked quietly. James considered the question. I think the galaxy learned something it had forgotten. That new species aren't jokes or curiosities. That primitive doesn't mean weak. That sometimes the greatest strengths come from those who have to fight for every meter of survival. He pulled up a holographic display showing galactic power distributions. Human influence had spread rapidly, not through military conquest but through alliances, trade, and the simple fact that other species wanted what humanity offered. Determination, innovation, and the willingness to stand with allies when times got hard. The Vaetari told me something interesting last week, James continued. They've been studying galactic history, looking at power transitions over the last 50,000 years. Every major shift came when an established power underestimated a rising one. The Korthan underestimated the Thulians. The Thulians underestimated the Klethani. The pattern repeats, and now everyone underestimated humanity, Elena finished. Exactly. But here's the interesting part. We're the first rising power in recorded history that didn't use our strength to dominate. We could have. After New Harmony, we had the military capacity and moral authority to demand almost anything. Instead, we asked for partnership and protection for others. Eleanor thought about that. It was true. Earth could have leveraged its victory into an empire. Instead, humanity had chosen to build a coalition, to lift up minor species, to create a more equitable galaxy. Maybe that's our real strength, she said softly. Not that we can fight, but that we remember what it felt like to be weak. We remember what it felt like to beg for help and be laughed at. So we make sure nobody else experiences that if we can prevent it. James nodded. That's why half the galaxy loves us, and the other half is terrified of us. We're unpredictable, because we don't follow the established patterns. We don't conquer, we ally. We don't dominate. We elevate. We're changing the rules. Elena's console chimed with an incoming message. She read it and smiled. It's from the Yolani Consortium. They've asked if Earth would consider establishing a joint colony in the Sagittarius Arm. Equal partnership, shared governance, human industry combined with Yolani agricultural technology. That's the 8th joint colony proposal this month, James observed. Because everyone remembers what we can build when we're motivated, Elena replied. In 4 months, we built a fleet large enough to defeat the Kryn. Imagine what we can build when we have time, resources, and partners who want to work with us instead of against us. She accepted the Yolani proposal and began drafting a response. As she worked, she thought about how far humanity had come, from desperate petitioners begging for scraps to a major galactic power that other species actively wanted to partner with, from a species facing extinction to builders of a new, more inclusive galactic order. But she also thought about the cost. 800,000 dead at New Harmony. General Chen, who had given humanity the strategy to survive but never lived to see the peace his sacrifice helped create. President Okonkwo's daughter, Sarah, who died in the first moments of battle. The millions of families who lost loved ones. The children who grew up without parents. The partners who buried their spouses. Their names were inscribed on memorial walls across Earth and all 12 colonies. The monument to human defiance on New Harmony listed every single person who died in the battle, their names carved in stone that would last millennia. Humanity would never forget what their survival had cost. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if the Assembly had helped us? James asked suddenly. If they'd given us protection or weapons or even just advice? Elena had thought about that often. We'd be different. Weaker, maybe. We'd be clients instead of partners. We'd owe the galaxy instead of standing as equals. So maybe their refusal was the best thing that could have happened to us. No, Elena said firmly. 800,000 people are dead, James. Nothing makes that the best thing. But we can honor their memory by making sure their deaths meant something. By building a galaxy where species help each other instead of laughing at desperate pleas. By proving that humans are more than survivors, we're builders of something better. 10 years after the Battle of New Harmony, the Galactic Assembly held a ceremony honoring humanity's contributions to galactic civilization. Representatives from all 600 species attended, along with delegations from 43 minor species that had joined the assembly under humanity's advocacy. Elena stood at the central podium in Chamber 7, the same chamber where she had begged for help and been dismissed. But this time, She stood not as a petitioner but as Earth's senior ambassador and a permanent member of the Assembly's Executive Council. High Arbiter Vril presented her with the Star of Unity, the Assembly's highest honor, given only 12 times in its 4,000-year history. As he placed the crystal medallion around her neck, he spoke words that echoed through the chamber and across the galaxy. Humanity came to us as children, desperate and afraid. We dismissed them. We failed them. We treated their suffering as entertainment. In our arrogance, we forgot that every established civilization was once young, once vulnerable, once in need of help. Humanity taught us to remember. Through their sacrifice and strength, they reminded the galaxy that compassion matters, that helping others is not weakness, and that the true measure of civilization is how we treat those who need us most. The assembled species rose in a gesture of respect that transcended any single culture. It was acknowledgement, apology, and recognition all at once. Elena accepted the honor, but her speech was brief. This belongs to every human who fought at New Harmony, to General Chen and the 800,000 who gave their lives, to the billions who mobilized Earth's industry and made the impossible possible, to everyone who refused to accept extinction. Their courage saved us. Their sacrifice transformed us. Their legacy challenges us to build a galaxy worthy of the price they paid. That evening, Elena and James stood once more at Luna Station's observation deck. Through the viewport, they could see ships from 100 different species, trade vessels, exploration ships, colony transports, all moving in the complex dance of galactic commerce. Earth was at the center of it all, no longer a peripheral world begging for acknowledgement, but a hub of innovation and partnership. "Do you think we've made the galaxy better?" James asked, echoing her question from years ago. Elena thought about the human protection protocols that had saved 3 species from extinction in the last decade. She thought about the joint colonies, where different species learned to build together. She thought about the young people, human and alien alike, who would grow up in a galaxy that valued cooperation over domination. "I think we're trying," she said, "and I think that's what matters. Not that we're perfect, but that we remember what it felt like to need help and be refused. So we help others when we can. We build bridges instead of walls. We prove that strength and compassion aren't contradictory." She looked at the memorial database on her personal display, scrolling through names of the fallen. Sarah Hokonkwo, age 26. Marcus Chen, age 62. Liwi, age 19. Jennifer Martinez, age 43. On and on. 800,000 names, 800,000 people who never got to see the galaxy they died to protect. "We owe them everything," Elena said quietly. "They bought us this future with their lives. The least we can do is make it a future worth having." James pulled her close. "We are. Every day we are." And in that moment, standing in the heart of humanity's home system, surrounded by the evidence of what their species had built from desperation and determination, Elena Vasquez allowed herself to believe it. They had started as victims, become warriors, and were now trying to be builders. The galaxy had learned not to underestimate humanity. Now humanity would teach the galaxy what it meant to rise with grace rather than domination, to remember vulnerability rather than embrace invincibility, to build peace that honored the cost of war. The stars stretched out before them, infinite and full of possibility. Humanity had earned its place among them, not through ancient claims or inherited power, but through the simple, stubborn refusal to die quietly. They had shown the galaxy their wrath when pushed to the edge. Now they would show the galaxy their wisdom in the years of peace ahead. The never-ending story of humanity's journey among the stars had truly begun. Comment for next part.